Hello, Marshall.
Hello, Alexandra.
How are you?
Very, very good. It's an honor and a privilege to be on with you.
Thank you. And Marshall is, of course, expert on Nibiru Flyby and has studied the topic at least since 1999, isn't it so? And you have very good
In
experience.
1999, actually, what happened? My first article was January of 2002, but in 1999, I started Yowza in December 1999, my website, and my first concern was global warming. And during the 90s, I had a travel business specializing in Russia. And I flew back and forth to Russia. I was there maybe a dozen times. And I typically would go over in December and come back in January because this is when I met with my operators. And I would fly Aeroflot because, to be honest, the Russian passenger jets have better, more comfortable coach sections. And you would go over the pole, so from San Francisco to Moscow. And what happened was, over a series of years, I watched the deterioration of the Arctic ice. Now, when I first saw it, which was in uh, my first trip, and I think it was January of 2003. And it was just stunning, from horizon to horizon, this beautiful white snow. There were rocks, blue ice. It was the first time in my life I had ever seen blue ice. I grew up in the deserts of Arizona. And when I was a child, blue ice was you went to the convenience store at the corner and you'd get a cone full of crushed ice and pour blue syrup on it. And that was the blue ice I knew about. And I was just mesmerized and spent hours just looking out the window. And what I noticed over the years as I was conducting my business was that there was this steady deterioration. And finally, on my last trip over, well, I think it was 7 times that I did this circuit. And the last time, the Arctic looked like a smashed windshield of a wrecked car in a junkyard. And it was just a terrible thing to look at. And it's not where they say, well, it's variability. One year's good, one year's bad, up and down, hills and valleys. No, it was a steady decline. And I remember on that last trip looking at that. And, this is back when people who were environmentally concerned were mocked and ridiculed as tree huggers in this country. But I looked at that and I just said, I believe my lying eyes. Excuse me. I'm going to believe my lying eyes on this one. And I started researching it. And it was this path of discovery that brought us to Planet X, because we're trying to go, what's causing this? All right. And we're looking at it and saying, okay, if this is something that is happening on a bigger scale than Earth, then it would stand to reason that other planets with an atmosphere in our solar system would be showing similar signs of perturbation. When we started looking, we were really surprised. We saw everything, every object in our system that has an atmosphere is perturbed, even Pluto. And most people know, like the big eye, the big red eye on Jupiter is going away. But there was also a wide range of other things where there were new radio frequency emissions, X-ray emissions. So there was a lot of stuff happening. And we were looking for what we call a smoking gun to say, all right, is our sun interacting with something else? Because we were not able to go back historically to see if there was any evidence of what we were seeing now. And it didn't have anything to do with sunspots. It had to do with luminance, the brightness of the sun. And so the luminance of the sun is increasing. It's increasing now, but it's increasing in a very fast pace. Sun is getting brighter. We have a much wider light. It's not as yellowish as when I was a kid. I could remember a yellow sun and a beautiful blue sky. Not anymore. And at that point, it was, is our sun interacting with something else, or is it just doing this on its own? Well, there's only 300 years of recorded solar activity, but there was nothing to indicate it. We were going through all kinds of reports on ice core samples, things like that. Nothing similar really to what we're seeing now, not unless you went way, way back into the past, which tend to indicate, okay, you have something that's coming around on a very long period, thousands of years. And that is what brought us to Planet X. And the confirmation of Planet X for us was actually, I believe, in 2006. And it was the Ulysses spacecraft that NASA had put in orbit, in a polar orbit around the sun. And what it showed was that the sun was clearly, the southern hemisphere of the sun was incredibly much more active and releasing photons than on the northern hemisphere of the sun, which would be consistent with the sun interacting with a large body approaching from the southern skies coming up. And this was really, for me, that was the first real smoking gun, was that information. Of course, there was not that much, because every time something gets interesting, NASA kills the feed. That's just the way they do business. And the first article I wrote, Did Planet X Kill the Dinosaurs? Was something it grew out of. I was going to do a television interview for PAX Television, and it was my second one. The first one was on asteroids, and I had done that. And a Dr. Brian Marsden of the Smithsonian Astrophysics Lab in Washington, D.C., he is the gentleman at that time. He was the gentleman that if you discovered something, he was the one who designated the name for it. And they came to me and they were asking me about the Chicxulub impact 65 million years ago and the dinosaurs, and to present an alternate theory. And around that same time, there were huge eruptions in India, the Deccan Traps. And we're talking about lava flows that were miles deep, miles. And so I did all that, and PAX put me on the air, and they chopped me up into little pieces so that I wound up saying on television that dinosaurs and human beings were alive for the benefit of Christian fundamentalists. And at the same time, it was just like, as a nightmare. But I published the work that I did, because Dr. Marsden spent a lot of time helping me with this alternate theory. He was really interested in it. And that was my very first article on Planet X. And since then, I really have followed a science path. Briefly about myself, I got involved with this because of my business in Russia, but that was something I was also doing while I had a career in the computer industry. I lived in Silicon Valley, and so my contract client list include people like Sun Microsystems, AT&T, Hewlett Packard, Lockheed Martin, all these major firms. And the thing is that I just followed the science. I like to do that. Back in the 80s, I was a science feature producer for Cable News Network, which was today, the Cable News Network today has nothing to do with the Cable News Network I knew. Back then, it was a very honest, it was good integrity, good professionalism. Now it's just a propaganda channel. But following the science approach has always been the first path, and I look for trends. That for me is an important thing. If you have one of something, or in what we in America we call a one-trick pony, well, you go ride your one-trick pony just by yourself. I'm not. I want to see something happen again and again and again and again and again. And then it gets my attention. And so this is how I've come to all of this. We've really looked for trends and how things are evolving out. I've been writing and publishing consistently on Planet X since 2002. My first book was Return of Nibiru, God's Child Covenant, Return of Nibiru. I did that in 2002 as a fiction novel, and it sold very well at the time. But then I did other books and over the years, and just keep following up with it. But my approach is always to stick with the science when I'm looking for things. But also I like to avoid all of this fear porn, as I call it, and people who look at that and then they put up a video, we're all going to die, we're all going to die, we're all going to die. And it's like, oh, give it a rest. Come on. This is difficult enough as it is when you look at the science. So we don't need the theatrics. Just put a sock in it. And that just pretty much is me, my style, how I come to it. What I can tell you now is I have been posting observation videos, and it started back in 2013 there was a webcam on the Turrialba volcano in Costa Rica, and we were getting images back then. And Nibiru was a very little tiny thing, blue, and I was calling it blue bonnet at the time. But I've been tracking over the years. People have been sending me observation videos, and now what's happening is where I can remember a time when I would get 2 or 3 observation submissions a year. Okay. Now I get 2 or 3 a day. But also what's interesting for me is there's multiple objects. They are much, much larger. And what's really telling for me is the timing on it, because if you have an object that's behind the sun or just close to the sun, the only times you can observe it are very close to sunrise and sunset. It's a magic moment where the atmosphere is bringing down the light of the sun enough that you could see the other object. And going back in my videos over the years, you can see that. However, now, instead of it being 15 to 30 minutes before and after sunrise, sunset, it's a couple of hours. So the viewing times have increased dramatically. I've noticed that. And just recently on my website, we posted, there was, I call it Ophelia Day. It was that day when the hurricane came into Europe. And first, Ophelia was fanning the fires in Spain and Portugal. And then in London, they were seeing multiple objects in the sky and making Star Wars comparisons. The BBC absolutely lied, point blank, no equivocation, dirty, filthy lie. They said that that hurricane caused that visual effect because it was carrying African sand that had blown in to the Azores where the hurricane formed and carried it then up into Europe. Well, for the record, that hurricane formed in the Atlantic basin, in the northern basin, and it formed out of a cold front. So there's no way it would have picked up sand from the Azores. There would have been particulates that it would have picked up when it whipped up the fires in Spain and Portugal. And this is the kind of lies that I see that are happening to make people just go, well, nothing happening here, move along. Go back to the store, go shopping, and don't pay attention to it. So the big thing is denial. And that's really the big thing. It's a very powerful human emotion. People go normalcy bias, or they'll say cognitive dissonance. Do not confuse me with facts. I have already made up my mind. This is a very strong thing. And it's very easy for trolls, debunkers, disinformation operatives to get people sidetracked. They'll invent any kind of nonsensical explanation, and nobody vets it. In other words, all of the scrutiny is on whoever's making the observation report. And the people who are tearing it apart with nonsense and ridiculous idiocy, there's no scrutiny of them. What they say is just taken face value as, oh, that must be what it is, because what people really want is somebody to say, hey, move on, nothing to see here. And there's that huge passion. So that's going to change. And it's going to change in a big way. And for people who are in awareness, they need to be prepared for that, because they're going to be playing an important role. And that is, if you're in awareness and you know what's coming and you're not playing these fear porn, denial, debunker games, but you're just looking at it and it's honest, you understand it, you're probably being mocked, ridiculed, humiliated by friends and family. All right. This is a very difficult topic. You have to understand that this is, when you talk about Planet X, what you're doing is you are triggering within each and every one of us something that is ingrained in the racial memories of our species. That being, when big rocks show up in the sky, people start dying and it gets ugly. So if you start talking about Planet X, what you're doing is provoking a very deep human engram, a memory engram that's passed on from generation to generation. And that's really what happens. And that's the reason why people, you could go out and say, yeah, man, that's it. I am going to grow the best roses in the entire world. And that's it. You're just going to talk about growing roses. Your spouse will probably go, but live with it, right? with Planet X, your spouse is going to be threatening you with divorce if you don't stop studying Planet X. That's it. They got their, they keep their thumb right on the nuclear button. It was my case. I had a marriage of 19 years and it failed because of the work that I do. So denial is a very strong thing. But for those of you who are in awareness, your job is not to be a leader. Your job is to be a teacher, a mentor, and a comforter. Those are the three things that you need to focus on. You need to help people who, when this becomes a topic so large that there's no kind of nonsense or denial fixation or whatever you want to call it, all of that's going to get washed aside like tears in the rain. And people are going to be looking up in the sky and they're going to be going, my God, what are we seeing? Now, when they do that, and I think 2018 will most likely be the year we start getting to a more global awareness, a conscious level. But we're not going to have a lot of the dangers. Now, right now, there are very, very distressing things happening with our planet. We are in the Holocene extinction event. Every day, 200 to 300 species are disappearing forever. And a good example of that would be corals. 50% of the corals on the face of the earth are dead. They've bleached out. And the rest are dying. Within a decade, there's only probably going to be about 5% of the corals in the world left. For third world countries where fish from the oceans is an important part of the diet, they're looking at probably a loss of up to 25% of their protein source. Because without the corals, where are you going to make? You don't have the fisheries. If you have a dead ocean, you don't have fish. You don't have fish, you don't have protein. Just real simple. So a lot of these things are happening. In Europe right now, humpback whales and orcas are going to be going extinct. They're going to be dying in that area because of all of the pollution in the ocean waters around Europe. And so they're being affected. So we have a lot of this that's going on. It has not hit the critical mass point where it really starts getting bad. It's called a positive feedback loop. We're very, very close. Once we hit that point of a positive feedback loop, then we're going to have what the term we use is biosphere implosion, that life on the planet is going to start shrinking, start going away. This is something, it's even, I find it interesting. There's a lot of Planet X preparatory in the Bible. And so the Bible warns about, a loss of species, huge die-offs in the oceans. And things can really get bad very quickly once the power grids go down. And that is going to be one of the leading causes of death, actually, because we're so dependent on power technology. But most especially because of nuclear plants. There's all of these nuclear plants around the world, and they're just tea kettles. And so if the grid goes down, the plant can shut down, they can scram the core, but they have to cool the core for a couple of years continuously with a fresh flow of water. Well, if you don't have electricity to run the pumps, you got a problem. What you're going to have is what we'll see is just Fukushima daiichis all around the world. There's going to be a huge amount of this. And all of these things, when they start to happen, it's just going to turn into a fur ball One thing's going to feed into another, into another, into another, into another. And we're looking probably at the worst of it, at the lowest point of what I call the Planet X tribulation. Human species could be whittled down to 5% of the current population. There's in Georgia, there's the Georgia Guidestones, and the Georgia Guidestones written in 8 languages, and it is 10 precepts, or what some call 10 commandments of the New Age. This is a very elegantly crafted granite structure with very precise celestial alignments and viewing ports built into it, which is a hallmark of secret societies. And the first precept or commandment is to keep the population under 500 million in balance with nature. What the Georgia Guidestones doesn't tell us is, how do we get from 7.5 billion to 500 million? How do you get rid of 7 billion people? All right. Well, the elites have a very long-term strategy on this. And if you, for example, knew that a certain stock was going to start going up tremendously and you could make a huge amount of profit on it, but you'd have to wait a little while to do it, would you just quietly buy the stock and not say anything? Or would you go out and tell the entire universe to go out and buy that stock? All right. Well, greed being what it is, you're going to sit on it and say, well, I'm not going to tell anybody. It's knowledge is power, and this is my advantage. Now, the elites understand that. When I say elites, it's like the powers that be, or the 1% of the 1% who run the world. All right. We have a slave planet. You literally have a handful of people that own most of the assets in the world right now. Okay. And there's not that much left over for everybody else. There's just the incredible super wealthy. Well, what they're really doing, they know what's coming. All right. And I'm going to share with you how they're doing this, how I see them doing this. Your listeners and viewers may go, well, I don't know about this and that, and they want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And we always do that. Decent people always want to be extra kind to sociopaths for some crazy reason. But they are taking a long-term view of this. For them, it's not survival of the species. It is about continuation of their power structure. They rule the planet, and they want to continue ruling the planet. As for the rest of us, they don't see us any differently than we look at farm-raised fish that we buy in the store. Just grow them as you need them. I mean, human beings are pretty consistent. Just give us a big bottle of wine and some Viagra, we'll work wonders. Okay, we'll start making babies. So thin the herd, as they say, cut the numbers back, makes it much more manageable for them. And they have deep bunker systems. They're 2 miles underground. They have an international network of it. One of the most elaborate bunker systems is Sweden. And interestingly enough, there's a few nations in Europe and elsewhere that have enough underground survival facilities for all of their native citizens. Other countries have a different approach. In America, they just bought a lot of guns, bullets, and coffins. And that's what our government's doing. So they're just planning on people dying. And we're going to have a tribulation period of approximately a decade long. And the worst of it will be in the first 4 to 5 years. And towards the end of that phase is when the elites are going to come up from their bunkers. Once they know the worst of it is just about past, and they'll go to the survivors and they'll say, look, we have warehouses full of food, clothing, medicine, everything you need to get started, seeds. All you have to do is take the chip, sign the deal. Give us power over your life, and we'll share this with you. And for people who are desperate, struggling, a bad deal is better than no deal when you're, wondering how many days you got left. And of course, then a lot of people will make that deal thinking they can find a way to beat the devil and get out of the deal. And there won't be getting any out of the deal. And once they've done that, then they've locked in their control over the surface of the planet. And for me, what's really important is if people have self-sufficiency, knowledge, hope for the future, and they know they're not alone, they're not going to be as likely to take that bad deal. They're going to be more likely to say, no, we'll just go it on our own. Thanks. The elites are not going to be nice because you're not saying no to the carrot, you're saying no to the stick. And so if you're not going to take the carrot, there will be the stick, and these people are going to be punished for it. But if, again, enough of them to make a difference do this, the elites will lose. They will lose control of the world, and humanity will evolve into a more enlightened and spiritual path. And that, to me, is there's that folk. It's a fork in the road. And interestingly enough, there's something called the Hopi Prophecy Rock. And if you look at that, that's what the Hopi Prophecy Rock says. We're going to come to a fork in the road. And if we go off in a new direction, then we're going to have a good future. And if we stay in the same direction, not going to be a good future. And if people do not make the change necessary when we come to that fork in the road, then we will condemn future generations to slavery for God knows how many centuries. It'll be that bad. But on the other hand, if we go the other way, we have a Star Trek future. We have a fantastic future. We're going to go to the stars. We're going to meet other races. We'll be invited as friends. We're not going to show up like Anunnaki stormtroopers to burn, kill, pillage, and steal. All right. But we're going to be welcomed as space brothers and sisters, if you will. And so that is, to me, the real crux of the issue with Planet X. And for that reason, on one end of it, you could say, well, Planet X is death and dying. Absolutely. But if you look at that, let's take some duality here and look at the flip side of that coin. What Planet X brings is a big reset button, like Control-Alt-Delete on your computer. Your computer just is so hopelessly, this is with Windows, it just gets messed up so much. The only way to fix it is just to reboot the computer. All right. Well, I see Planet X as a Control-Alt-Delete for human posterity. And because it is going to be something that we cannot right now overcome the power of the elites, given the current structure. But once their power mechanisms are disabled by the flyby of Planet X, things are up for grabs. And they have their plans and they think they're clever, but the Nazis proved very clearly nothing ever goes according to plan. That for me is the big thing about the work that I'm doing is I'm always thinking about that fork in the road. And is there something I can do, something I can say? What can I do to be of service to people so that whoever survives to see that point in time will understand the evil that is being offered by the sociopaths so that they can resume control, and will pay the price to say, no, I'm not going to participate in it. Like Gandhi taught us with passive resistance. And that for me is the topic in a whole. For your viewers out there who are going, all right, well, we've been talking about Planet X. What is Planet X? All right. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what we're Planet X is a name that was it was a term invented by Percival Lowell, a very famous astronomer, American astronomer, who founded the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. And he was looking for Neptune's perturber. Now I'll give you just kind of an encapsulation of, if you watch my video, Planet X, Who, What, Where, When, Why, and How, that video lays this out in a lot of detail, but I'll just quickly capsulize it. The search for Planet X has been going on for an incredibly long time, longer than what people think. It's not an internet hoax. This really started with the discovery of Uranus. All right. And Uranus was the first planet in our solar system to be discovered with a telescope. And then early observations of Uranus showed perturbations in its orbit, little zigzag patterns. Something was tugging, something was pulling at it, something it's called an orbital perturbation. And so they made enough observations of Uranus that mathematicians were able to deduce the location of Neptune. And so where Uranus was the first planet discovered with the telescope, Neptune was the first planet discovered with mathematics. Once they mathematically determined where Uranus's perturber would be, John Galt at the observatory in Berlin just was given the coordinates, and he just zoom, pow, that was it. It was all over very quickly. But then they were observing Neptune, and what happened was they started seeing this pattern of perturbation again in Neptune's orbit. And so they began looking for Neptune's perturber, which is really the very first designation, if you will, for Planet X. And what happened was that the effort kind of languished in Europe, which this is where Planet X research was going on. And then this Bostonian by the name of Percival Lowell, independently wealthy, so he doesn't have anybody politically telling him what to do or say. When he founded the observatory in Flagstaff, and this is well over a century ago, and he was specifically looking for Neptune's perturber. And he created the term Planet X. Now, Planet X does not mean Planet 10. Planet X means X. X as in the unknown. That, for example, they knew mathematically of the existence of Neptune because they saw how it was perturbing the orbit of Uranus. So with Planet X, you're looking for something you know is out there because you may not be able to see it, but you can see the other planets it is affecting, and you can see how they're responding to it. So that's what Planet X is really talking about. It's something that's been discovered mathematically, but not yet observed. And in 1930, Clyde Tombaugh of the Percival Lowell Observatory discovered Pluto. Now, they thought Pluto was Neptune's perturber. And it stood that way for a long time, and kind of like problem solved. That was until they discovered Pluto's moon, Charon. And then they were able to determine that Pluto wasn't big enough to be Neptune's perturber. Pluto is only 60% the size of our own moon. It's pretty small. So it's not big enough to kick sand in a bully's face, if you will. And so consequently, the search is still on. And as it turns out, when we talk about Planet X, we really have to use a new term I call Planet X system, because we live in a binary star system, multiple suns. 90% or more of all of the galaxies, the solar systems in our galaxy, have multiple suns. All right. And, solar systems with only one sun are pretty rare. And, and then there's the question of how many of them will actually have planets in orbit around them. So we have a binary star system, our sun, and a smaller twin. The smaller twin, back when I was in high school in the 60s, this was called nemesis theory. It was incredibly popular. This is where I first learned about all of this, was in high school science. And the fact that we could be in a binary star system was an exciting thing. You go back and you read articles from Time Magazine, Washington Post, and so forth. The reporting was very clear. It was very fascinating, and there was a very healthy, open discussion about everything. There was an astronomer in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Naval Observatory in Washington. He wrote a brilliant white paper on it, had a telescope. His name was Harrington, had a telescope made, sent to a United States observatory in New Zealand for a sky survey. The films were sent to NASA. NASA immediately buried all the films so no one would ever see what they saw. And shortly after that, Harrington died in what many believe was an assassination, because he had contracted a very aggressive form of cancer that was known to be used by intelligence agencies for targeted killings. Now, the reason why he was murdered, as many believe, is, and I follow with that as well, was that there's a gentleman by the name of Zecharia Sitchin who wrote The 12th Planet, and he did translations of the ancient Sumerian texts, which talks about an object that's in a 3,600-year orbit. Now, the important thing you have to remember is that's 3,600 lunar years, not Gregorian years. When you do it in lunar years, the math works out perfectly. When you do it with the Gregorian calendar, it's all over the map. So Sitchin did a documentary for television called Are We Alone? And he actually interviewed Harrington in his office at the United States Naval Observatory, and he was showing a diagram of the orbital projection for this. And I knew that he had crossed the line. He went a bridge too far when Sitchin asked him about the possibility of life on this planet, and he said it was possible. There are things that astronomers, if they talk about it, they die. One is the presence of extraterrestrials. Two is our solar system is a binary solar system, multiple suns. And three is that there is a possibility of sentient life on another object in orbit around our sun. Those are three things that if astronomers talk about it, that's it. They lose their jobs, their lives are destroyed. Now, people kind of, oh, gee, I don't know about that. When was the last time, I will ask your viewers, you were flying on a commercial airliner and you heard the pilot say, if you will look out the left side of the aircraft, you will see a UFO that has been following us for 200 miles. Pilots are not going to say that because they know that if they report a UFO, it's welcome to the exciting world of fast food. They're making hamburgers at McDonald's. They're not flying airplanes anymore. So people's incomes, livelihoods, that's how all the suppression and is happening. Now, is there historical evidence of Planet X? In folklore, obviously. It's interesting that the ancient Egyptians and the Hebrews both used the same term. They call it the destroyer. The ancient Celts called it the frightener. In other places, it was called Hercolibus. That's what the Atlanteans called it. The red dragon is what the Chinese called it. Red planet. So it has had many different names because it is appearing in the folklore of cultures that, not like the internet today where everything goes through Google. Those in the old days when what somebody was doing on the other side of the world, you didn't even know they were on the other side of the world. All right. And what we really have, when we look at this is here's Nemesis, which is this sister companion star to our own sun. And Nemesis is the name that was given to it by astronomers back when, when I was in high school and many gray hairs ago. And there was a lot of excitement about the possibility. Now, it's a brown dwarf. And a brown dwarf is a very small, very dark star, very difficult to see it until it's close in. The very first person who actually started talking about Planet X and being in orbit around a dark star was Carlos Muñoz Ferrada, a Chilean astronomer. And he announced the existence of Hercolibus. That was the name used by the ancient Atlanteans for Planet X. He first announced that in 1940. All right. So you have professional astronomers that are talking about it, but they are suppressed. If they're lucky, they get enough notoriety, they're not assassinated. But it is a third rail topic. All right. As they say, jump down into the subway and hit that third rail. Woo! That'll spark your day. And Nemesis, a brown dwarf star, Nemesis, is probably about twice the size of Jupiter. In fact, there are some people that even think Jupiter should be designated as this type of star, not a planet, because Jupiter actually gives off more radiation than it receives from the sun. All right. But a brown dwarf is going to be larger. And it's kind of interesting. There was a movie, 2010, with Roy Schneider, came out many years ago. And it had this, what happens if Jupiter were to turn into a smaller second star? And Nemesis, as a brown dwarf, it's an object in space with enough mass to ignite, like our sun ignited. All right. The difference is it doesn't have enough mass to keep that nuclear furnace going. So it's more like, think about when you're grilling or barbecuing out in the backyard, and you get your charcoal white hot, and then that's when you put the meat on, because after that it's just going to bank off. It's just going to be cooling and cooling and cooling and cooling, and that's the perfect way to control the meat that you're barbecuing. Well, what's happening with a brown dwarf star is it's banking off like the coals in your barbecue, except billions of years. It's just not one day. And Nemesis, because it ignited and couldn't keep its furnace going, it is surrounded by a large, thick cloud of iron oxide dust. All right. And it has its own planets and moons. Now, in my book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, I talk about the three major planets. There are minor planets in the Planet X system in orbit around Nemesis, but I talk about three, which are Helion. It's the innermost, and it's a large, bright, gaseous planet. Then there is a rocky planet, second out from that, Arbota. And then far beyond that is Nibiru. Nibiru, translated from Sumerian, is the planet of crossing. And so it's the one that comes closest to us in that system. The orbit of that system is inside the orbit of Jupiter, between Jupiter and Mars. So it comes in, arcs up above the sun and goes back down, but it's inside the orbit of Jupiter. Whereas Nibiru is far enough out that it passes between us and Venus. And perhaps you know of a fellow, Major Ed Dames in America. Is that familiar? He does remote viewing. This is psychic work for intelligence agencies. And he is talking about something called a kill shot. That's going to be a problem for the Earth. And the kill shot he describes is actually a cosmic sprite, and this is solar. This is solar lightning. All right. And you look at, for example, the planet Mars, and then you look at you look at Earth, and in Arizona we have the Grand Canyon, and we're told that the Grand Canyon was created by water erosion. And long before I ever heard of Planet X, that never made sense to me. But you look at Val Marineris on Mars, that is the largest canyon system on any planet in our solar system. And that, to me, is evidence of a solar sprite, where literally lightning came from the sun and struck the planet. And that's what he's talking about, is that we have a problem. Another thing he says is that we're going to have a pole shift event. And when we have the pole shift event preceding the kill shot, there's going to be a large planet passing between Earth and the sun. That will be Nibiru. Nibiru is probably, by estimates, depending on who's talking about it, 5 to 7 times the size of Earth. So when it passes between Earth and Venus, it is going to completely blot out the sun. It's not like when we have a lunar eclipse where you have that beautiful halo. All right. Um, no halo. I mean, when Nibiru passes between Earth and the sun, it's just going to be darkness like we've never seen before. And it will be the days of darkness as prophesied in the Bible. That is when we have the pole shift event. And remember, Planet X is a system. So let's talk about the celestial alignments. There was a gentleman by the name of Bob Dean who called it in 2008. And to me, Bob is just one of the heroes of Planet X. He's an amazing man. He's well advanced in his 80s right now. But his work is stellar. And what he said is when the Planet X system is moving to its southern leg, where it's going back down way below the sun, it's going to be on our side of the sun when it crosses the plane of our solar system. Imagine the equator of the sun and going out to the 12 signs of the zodiac, the constellations. And it's going to be between Jupiter and Mars at the ecliptic, but then it's going to have its other planets, Arbota, Helion, Nibiru. So you're going to have 4 objects in space that are exerting tidal gravitational forces on the Earth. And tidal gravitational forces are very powerful. A lot of people think the sun is the greatest source of gravity in terms of what affects our planet, but it's not. It's our moon. If our moon disappeared tomorrow, just boom, some alien showed up and zapped it with a secret ray gun and the moon disappears. Well, what happens to us? Well, the entire surface of our planet would collapse 18 inches. This is an extinction level event. And it's interesting when you look at literature like H.G. Wells, all right, that H.G. Wells was talking about damage to the moon causing problems for the Earth, the reduction in tidal gravitational forces. So you're going to have 4 objects in space exerting greater gravitational lock, if you will, on our planet, much greater than the moon, many, many times that of the moon. So we are going counterclockwise around the sun, but the Planet X system orbits like a comet, and it is going to be going clockwise. So we're like ships passing in the night. Well, as our ships pass in the night, the tidal gravitational forces are what I call lithosphere lock. And it's actually, no, excuse me, that was a term I remember years ago, a British coal miner, I think he invented that term, lithosphere lock. It's very good. Lithosphere is the outer shell of the planet. And it grabs onto that, and then it is going to affect us in multiple ways. And in my book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, I showed this step by step. But briefly, the spin of the Earth is going to slow to a stop, and then the Earth is going to then reverse its spin going the opposite direction, which means after the pole shift, we're going to see the sun rising not in the east, but in the west. Now, at that time, this is when, if you are on the surface of the planet, you're going to die. Structures on the surface, everything on the surface is just going to be tore up. We're going to lose the magnetosphere that protects us. We're going to have hypervelocity winds, tsunamis, all kinds of events that are happening. It'll be really awful for people that are along shorelines. Most of the population of humanity lives within 50 kilometers of a shoreline. And anyone that's living near a major body of water, you're going to get ground to pieces by tsunami waves. So that's the reason why the elites really do not want people to be in awareness and understand what's happening, because they'll start moving off the coastlines. They want them to stay in the coastlines. It's called shelter in place, SIP, shelter in place. And they want people to shelter in place thinking they'll be safe, so that when the tsunamis hit, they'll drown, be ripped to shreds. All right. And because the elites want the maximum amount of death possible, they want to come out of this with a small number of survivors that are going to be much easier for them to control. Controlling 7.5 billion or so people, not so easy. 500 million, they can do that real handily. Now, the other thing we're going to have is a crustal shift. And a crustal shift, there are some people that will say, well, the Earth will flip head over heels, completely 180 degrees over. If that happens, planet Earth would be lucky to have single cell animals. All right. There's nothing historically, nothing in folklore, ancient accounts that talks about that kind of outcome. We're talking more about a difference of degrees, probably anywhere from 10 to 12, 13 degree shift, where we rotate a little bit. And a good way to think about that is, imagine a city like San Francisco that now is going, after the pole shift, is going to have a climate more like, say, the big island of Hawaii. All right. Or you have some place like Montana, which is going to then have an environment more like that of Colorado. That kind of a degree in difference. The other thing that could be a problem is if we have an axial pole shift. The Earth is tilted on its axis 23.5 degrees relative to the ecliptic. And that's the reason why we have this beautiful 4 seasons. Now, if that 23.5 degree angle changes on our axis, different outcomes. If it is going to shift, it's going to be less than 23.5, then we're going to have less differentiation between the seasons. More likely, we're just going to have 2 seasons, winter and summer. And if it goes the other way, then the seasons are going to become incredibly extreme. Either way, it's going to make a tremendous amount of stress for life on the planet. Now, what's interesting is that in a book Zachariah Sitchin published, and it was a direct translations of Lord Enki of the Anunnaki, and it was called The Lost Book of Enki. It was written in Enki's own words through a scribe, and Enki describes everything. The very first calendar ever created for the planet was by Lord Enki of the Anunnaki. And that was a lunar calendar. And many, there are many cultures that have lunar calendars. And that was basically the prevailing type of calendar before the Gregorian calendar was introduced. And the thing about that was interesting was when he created it, he only had 2 seasons, winter and summer. Same duration, same period of time, but only 2 seasons, which makes one tend to believe that perhaps when the Anunnaki first came, Earth was not so heavily tilted on its axis. And maybe it was only a 15-degree tilt. All right. This is, that is a possibility. So we have a reverse of spin. We have a crustal shift. We could have an axial shift. Also, there's a magnetic shift. A magnetic shift is the north and the south pole magnetically flip. And that's already beginning right now. The magnetic full pole flip always begins, what scientists have determined is that it begins in the South Atlantic. And where there are small pockets of areas in the Atlantic where polarity shifts and north becomes south and south becomes north. About a decade ago, there was a problem with commercial airliners that has just started out in the South Atlantic. They just started falling out of the sky. People couldn't understand what was happening. And these were the early fly-by-wire jets, like the Airbus. And it was determined by the Russians, actually, that what was happening was you had these pockets of polarity flip already happening in this area. When planes flew into it, their electronics just simply couldn't cope with this. I mean, it turned the world upside down for them. And so then the aircraft would crash. And until they were able to resolve it, the Russians actually prohibited military flights in those regions. And this has been quietly addressed over the years since then. So you have all of these factors that come into play that when we have this pole shift event, it's going to be very, very destructive. Now, the very last thing that's going to happen is we're going to fly through the tail of the Planet X system. It is a long iron oxide. If you look at the 10 plagues of Exodus, what the 10 plagues of Exodus in the Bible really describes is flying through the tail. All right. And because the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to have iron oxide all over the place. So surface water is going to be terribly polluted. If you don't have a good deep well or a way to filter the water, you're really going to have a problem. That, of course, is going to cause crop failures. People are trying to raise crops at the time. Then will come the meteor showers. This is another plague of Exodus. And so we have all of these impactors, small impactors that are showering down on us. And then you go through the whole series of things. For example, and here's something I'd like to, piece of advice I want to give your viewers right now, and keep this in mind. When you read your Bible, look, I think it's the 8th plague, the volcanic ash boils. I think the Hebrew term for it was shikin. And this is definitely going to happen. We've already got massive amounts of volcanism and seismicity. And when you have all these volcanoes popping off all around the world, especially with supervolcanoes, you're going to have volcanic ash in the sky everywhere. And volcanic ash is just imagine that your body is bathed by little shards of broken glass getting into the pores of your skin. And so what will happen is this is going to start causing people to develop manifest boils. Very, very open, painful, sore boils on their skin that'll be incredibly difficult to heal. And there's things that you can do to get around that. One is with clothing. What I suggest is that you have natural fibers, cloth, wool. If you have cotton shirts, you want to wear 2 long sleeve shirts, one over the other. So you get your normal cotton shirt size, and then you buy another shirt 1 or 2 sizes larger than that. Uh, you wear gloves. You're using face protection. You're using a face mask. You're really doing this. But the other thing is that you're still going to be exposed to it, and you're still going to have exposed areas of skin that are getting the ash. So you want to be able to wash that off. Water is going to be at a premium. So most people, if you have a 1-gallon sponge bath, that's going to be as good as it gets. And you want to be able to sponge off your body, get all of that volcanic ash off so it doesn't get down into the pores of your skin and cause these horribly painful ash boils. If you don't have the water, get a shovel, dig into the ground. Go down deep enough so that you can find clean soil or clean clay and use that. So you wash with water, clean soil, or clean clay. But whatever you do, you got to get that volcanic ash off your skin. Otherwise, you get the boils. The boils will be terribly debilitating. And a lot of people will, that have them, they're going to be so painful, so terrible. It probably will cause a lot of people just want to have assisted suicides. So that's something, to definitely keep in mind for your viewers out there. Remember that. Keep your skin clean.
Yeah, and it's good to have a lot of water.
Absolutely.
Both for drinking and for cleaning and so.
Water is life. Period. I see people that go out and they buy a piece of land for their survival site, and they ask me, "What do you think?" And I go, "Where's the water?" And they'll say, "Well, it's trucked in, or it comes in, or there's a deep well, or it's really difficult." And wells will fail. Water systems are going to fail. If you have a piece of land, there are 3 things that you really want to look for in survivable land. Number 1, you want to be away from the shorelines, at least 150 miles away from a shoreline. I prefer elevations of about 3,000 feet and higher, 2,000 to 3,000 feet, but not over 5,000 feet. You'll have to convert that in meters. And the reason why is once you're over 5,000 feet, it's high altitude farming, which you can do. You can farm at that elevation, but you really have to know exactly what you're doing. You have to be properly equipped for it because it's short seasons and difficult for growing. So typically, if you're looking for like 3,000, 4,000 feet, you're going to be above the threats, but you're going to be below the elevation of high altitude farming, so that you're going to be able to, once things settle down, start planting crops and making life. And when you are looking for these things, this place, what you want is soft earth, rolling hills, all right, and you want lots of water, multiple water sources. Ideally, you would be on a property that would have its own natural spring. Okay. Or you could just literally dig a well 20 feet and there you go. So you have a lot of water, groundwater. And this is going to be absolutely imperative. You don't want to be along rocky mountains and things like that, because with all of the earthquakes, you're going to have boulders raining down on you. That's no good. So again, get far inland, soft earth, a lot of water, rolling hills. And rolling hills are important because you want to be able to dig your shelters. Now, we're going to have a lot of solar radiation that's going to come in from the storms that are going to happen during the flyby. And so during the day, people are going to, you listen, you read the Bible, you read, like Mother Shipton prophecies and seers and predictions and things like that. They talk about people going into the earth, going into the ground. You're going to have to do that. What I advise for people is that you want to have at least 12 feet of dirt over your head. So you're digging into the side of a hill, and there's 12 feet of dirt over your head where everybody's at. That's going to protect you from the real heavy solar radiation. There's also, you have electromagnetic pulse, EMP, which can be caused by nuclear weapons, but also EMPs are going to come from solar events. And 5 feet of dirt will protect you from most typical EMPs. But for the tribulation, I'm recommending, 12 feet of dirt. A good thing to have is if you have, for example, volcanic basalt rock in your area, or where you can get it trucked in. That is, volcanic basalt is a very good radiation shield. It's paramagnetic rock, and it will, when you look at, shielding yourself from radiation, if you say, for example, go with steel plate on one side and on the other snow, all right? So snow is not going to give you much protection. It'll block a little bit, but nothing to brag about. Steel, on the other hand, that's a very good source of protection. And you have concrete and so forth. Paramagnetic basalt, volcanic basalt, according to some geologists, they believe that inch for inch, it gives as much protection for what's coming as steel plate. So if you put in a couple of feet of volcanic basalt, aggregate, crushed aggregate, and you don't have to get the expensive crushed aggregate, which is, it's going to be uniformly sized. You can get what's called tailings, and this is what's left over after the quarry is crushing the rock, and this, they sell that a lot cheaper because it's really just a fill material. And so you could buy the tailings and put a couple of feet of tailings and a couple of feet of soil on top of that with some drainage, and there you go. And after the tribulation is passed, the basalt can be ground into a fine powder and used as a fertilizer. So you get a lot of use out of it. And these are some of the simple things that people can do. Another thing that I see quite often is what I call me and mine prepping, and where people are saying, well, just for me and my family, and I don't care about anybody else. All right. Well, that's not going to work out for those people. What I'm trying to tell folks is that you need to be in a community of 150 or more people. We're going to go through a period of time when you're going to have some very nasty predators out there. All right. And you're going to have what I call the biters. You're going to have cannibals. There will be cannibalism. There will be biters. People don't think, well, modern human beings, you're not going to have cannibalism. Well, I'm sorry, but ask somebody that lived through the 900-day siege of Leningrad during World War II. And cannibalism in Leningrad was a real problem. People were starving to death because the Nazis had laid siege to the city. 1 million people died. I mean, to put that in perspective, take Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Dresden and put them all together, and you could, you could double that number and still not exceed, the number of people who died of starvation in Leningrad. So we're going to have that. You're going to have people that they can't make anything, create anything. They can just take, steal, rob, pillage, plunder. And we're going to have to wait those folks out. They're not going to, as it becomes more difficult for them to find their victims, they're going to wind up turning in on themselves. And who are they going to be looking for are going to be what I call the bunker bunnies, the people that are just saying, well, it's just me and my family. So they're planning maybe 10, 12, 15 people, and that's all they're doing. And it's like they're going to have the best guns. They're going to have this. They're going to have that. Now these nasties, these predators are just going to watch them and wait for an opportunity to jump them. And then that's it. It'll be murder, mayhem, and rape and theft. And so that's going to be a very difficult time for people that are in a community of 150. Even if all they have is a whole bunch of old bolt-action rifles from World War II and cheap surplus ammunition. Think about it. If you have one or two people with a modern assault rifle guarding a small enclave of 12, 13, 14 people, that's one thing. But on the other, if you're a predator and you see you got a community of 150 people over there, and they've just got these old bolt-action rifles, but they've got 100 of them, what are you going to do? Are you going to charge 100 bolt-action rifles? Or are you going to wait to sneak up on some people that, have more modern weapons, snipe them, take them out, then go in and do whatever you want? So the predators are going to feed off of the me and mine. The larger communities, people that are going to organize, they're going to deal with those predators. They will have members in their communities that come from the military, SWAT teams. They have sniper training, rifle, they're riflemen, they're sharpshooters. They'll go out and hunt them down. They're not going to wait for these predators to show up at their doorstep. They'll be actually getting teams of people working out into the field to create an extremely wide perimeter. And the predators are going to know, you go into that valley, boom, you're just going to die. Bullets going to come out of nowhere, and your head's going to explode, and that's the end of you. And you'll never find who did it. And so they'll make themselves very, very hard targets. That's the point of it. There's nothing absolute. You just make yourself a hard target. If someone wants to attack you, it's going to be so horrifically costly in terms of resources and blood. You just don't, there's no point. Don't bother. Your likelihood of success is going to be pretty small. So you were, earlier, I think you held up my book, if you would, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation.
Shall I?
The other one, it's the green cover, it's the large book.
Yeah, sorry. I have 3 books from you. This is your...
There you go.
Yeah, this is...
And if you read the back of the book, it actually gives the strategy. What I'm saying for people, for those in awareness, and for those that are in awareness, the strategy is really simple. You need to start working with faith-based organizations locally in your area. Small independent churches are what you're really looking for. Mainstream churches with large vertical hierarchies, they're going to do what they're told to do. They're going to play along. That's probably what you should expect with them. But it's going to be where you have faith leaders who are more independent. They march to the beat of a different drummer. And They're the kind of people you're looking for, the ones that can look up in the sky and go, I don't care what anybody else tells me. I see a clear and present danger, and I need to get my flock to safety. All right. And churches, for people who have very little resources, faith-based organizations, churches, and so forth, are going to be the most capable response, more than business. That's because faith-based organizations have three big advantages. Number one advantage is you have an established chain of command, leadership. Now, does that mean churches are not political? Oh, tell me what is not political, okay? But there's going to be someone who leads, and there's going to be someone who's supporting them, and people are with that. And so they have an established chain of leadership. And this is really important, Alexandra, because what I notice with small survival groups that form, and they're not spirit-based, they're not spiritual, is that they're very good at bullets, beans, and bunkers. And once they've got their bullets, beans, and bunkers, and they're just sitting there going, okay, when's the disaster going to happen? You know, when's the big day going to happen? It's not happening, not happening. And they'll get into political divides as different members of that organization try and take control. Once that group splinters, comes apart, then that's it. You know, they're no longer an effective survival group, and they go to the wind. Whereas with churches, you already have an established hierarchy, and people accept it, and they're happy with it, or at least they're working with it. The second thing is that a church has emergency logistics that are unique. Now, a church can spend 30 years trying to raise money to build a library. But if there's a natural disaster, within a period of just 3 days, they're ready to go out and start helping people get on their feet again. All right. So they're out there, you know, helping victims, running soup kitchens, doing this kind of stuff. Churches just can be amazing at the way that they mobilize for emergency response. Then the third thing is diversity of skill set. You go to pray with other people, you're all there for the experience of praying together. All right? But you come from different walks of life. The person next to you could be a doctor, and the other one could be a sanitation engineer. The one in front of you could be a bookkeeper who happens to be fascinated with amateur radio and has a full ham station and talks around the world. All right? So you have people who have skills, but they have interests. And the interests are important because, you know, we get skill sets that are going to give us a paycheck. All right? And then we have things that we do because we're just interested, and we have our own personal interests, and we pursue it on a hobbyist basis. Well, there's a lot of things that you do for a paycheck that are completely irrelevant. I do not think we are going to need tax advisors during the Planet X tribulation. On the other hand, what we are going to need are grandmothers who know how to grow herbs and to make healing tinctures, teas, potions, how to calm children, you know, how to help people overcome stress. So all of those skills that grandmother has are going to be immensely valuable for a survival role. But in the job market, it's like, no, we don't need herbs. You know, we need a software engineer. All right. So you're going to have that diversity of skill sets. And what I'm saying in my book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, is you need to go out and find these communities. Now, I also did, if somebody goes to Two Suns in the Sky, it'll take you to my church website, and you can watch my videos. And there I get into a lot of this on how to go out and find the right kind of faith-based leaders to get behind. You do not want to be a leader. Your role, your awareness is to be a teacher, a mentor, and a comforter. That's your role. And so you're going to connect with the leadership of a church. You go into a faith-based organization, you do not want to go in at the bottom. You want to go in at the top. All right? So you just don't want to be a new member of the membership and you're, way down, politically speaking, in that body. You're at the bottom. You're bottom feeding. You want to be able to work directly with the leadership of that institution. And here is where people who are in awareness do not understand their greatest value, their greatest asset. I often hear from people in awareness, I know about all of this stuff and what's coming, and it's all pointless because I don't have the money for bullets, beans, and bunkers. That's thinking like a consumer. In our consumer societies, how do we define ourselves? What kind of person am I? All right. Well, we define it by what is our car? What is our house? Do we have the handsome, beautiful spouse? Do we have things, possessions, these affiliations? And if you don't have it in a consumer society, you go out and spend money to get it or go into debt to get it. So to make yourself a whole person, you go shopping. And so we tend to see ourselves not in terms of what we have of value. We tend to see ourselves in terms of what we do not have and what we need to acquire so that we can fill in the gaps. Now, if you're in awareness, and most people who are in awareness about Planet X are baby boomer generation, my generation, born after World War II. And in most cases, they've been in awareness since they were children, dreams, visions, premonitions. And over the years, they've studied it. It's been a brutal experience because their husbands and wives, family and friends, coworkers mock and humiliate them, ostracize them. Oh, you're crazy, you're stupid, go away. And so they become isolated. And all they would really like to do is just share the hard information that they're coming across in their own personal research with others if they want to listen to it. And they want to share the information as an act of love. And what they get in return is horrific abuse. But it toughens them up. And so they've had years to work their way through the process of first coming to grips with everything that's going to happen, and then the consequences and how that's going to roll out. Well, what we have now is a lot of people, folks in awareness are a fraction of 1% of the population of the planet. But if you are in awareness, your number one benefit you're going to have is your countenance, your face. Now imagine a leader of a faith-based organization, and people are looking on the news, and they've gone out in the street, and everyone's pointing up at the sky going, you ever seen anything like that? No. Oh, well, let's go watch CNN and see what they say. And then they're going to get the big lie, which will be, it's just an interesting light show. Don't worry, it'll fly by. When you hear it's just going to be an interesting light show, that's your last chance to plan and prepare. That's it. That's your last window of opportunity, period. Because they're going to assure you nothing big is going to happen, but big will happen. All right. And people are going to be unsettled and they're going to be uncertain. And then you're going to have the same talking heads come on and going, well, our projection models didn't show all of this because we're in undiscovered territory and and we have updated our projection model, and we're happy to tell you that this is as bad as it's going to get. When you hear it's as bad as it's going to get, that's going to let you know that dying time is near. And then if you're not prepared, you're not ready for what happens by then your chances of surviving are going to be infinitesimally small. People who have been in awareness for a long time in their lives, what I tell them is, the last thing you want to do when people really wake up to the fact they've been set up to fail is to go, well, I told you so, or I've known about this, or I've been following it. Because people are going to be angry, they're going to be emotional and irrational. And you could say, I've known about this, I've been trying to tell you, nobody would listen to me. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have somebody step out of the crowd who has a PhD, point a finger at you and say, this is happening because you manifested it. You wanted it to happen. You thought about it. You made it happen through your mental manifestation. All we have to do is kill you to kill your manifestation, and this will all go away. Then next thing you know, you hear 5 other people in the crowd going, get a rope. And then next thing you know, you're dangling from a tree and you're choking to death on that rope. Okay. Now, that sounds absolutely crazy, ludicrous, and insane. But that's exactly the way it's going to work. Because people will become so emotional, so distraught by this mortality that is going to impact us, that they're not going to handle it all that well. So what I tell people in awareness is, don't tell anybody what you know. Be very circumspect. Only share it where you need to. So now let's go back to that faith-based organization. So there's a preacher, a minister, a rabbi, all right, someone who's running it. What you're going to do is you're going to walk up, get to know that person, and you're going to, when you want to, and I do this in my 2 Sons in the Sky, you want to interview them to see what their mindset is. Are they going to be adaptable to making the necessary changes? Many years ago, there was a movie that came out called The Poseidon Adventure by Dino De Laurentiis. And it was interesting that there was, the ship had turned over and the people are, they're in a ballroom, which is way underwater, but it hasn't been leaking. And there's this minister who says, we've got to get out of here. And the only way is up through the bottom of the ship because we're upside down. And the purser of the ship is going, that's absolutely ridiculous. We're going to stay here and wait for them to come down to us and rescue us. And so this preacher says, no, I see a clear and present danger. I'm going up to the bottom of the ship. And a few people follow him. And no sooner than they're just out of that area and getting ready to start their journey up, then that whole ballroom floods and all those people drown. Now, those people up to the point where the ballroom flooded were listening to the purser and they were going, Well, he's a clever fellow. I'm going to let him do my thinking for me. And that's what's going to kill a lot of people. Okay. They're going to let someone else do their thinking for them. You got to do your thinking for yourself. All right. And you're looking for a leader of a faith-based organization that can do that. Specifically, when everybody's looking up at the sky and seeing this at the same time, that faith-based leader says, I don't care what they're saying on television. That's fake news. I believe my own two lying eyes, and what I see is a clear and present danger, and I'm going to get my people to safety. Now, while that leader is doing that, and that's going to be a very challenging moment because there's a lot of folks that are going to say, no, let's do the intelligent thing. CNN says just stay where you are so everyone can die, right? We've talked about that. But that faith leader is going to know, no, they're going to trust their gut. They're going to talk to God. They're going to ask for direction. All right? And that's important because if you want to walk out of this tribulation, there's only one way to do it. You got to walk through it with God. Period. Now, that faith-based leader is going to have an inner circle of people who are advising and helping them to administer that organization. Think about what they're going through. All of a sudden, this compression of awareness where life as we know it is going to end, and for many of us, life is just going to end, period. And people are not going to be dealing with it. They're going to be racing around like chickens without heads, popping off conspiracy theories, denial, emotion, crying, anger, accusations. All kinds of human foibles are going to come in because it's just going to be so much grief and shock. But you've been an awareness, and you've been going for decades through the abuse of your friends and your families and coworkers and the isolation, the mockery, the humiliation. Yet you've persisted in your studies, and now you've been there, done that. You're unshakable. All right. If having a spouse, a husband or a wife, threaten you every day with divorce if you don't stop your Planet X research isn't enough to harden you, what is? And that's when you are going to present yourself to that leader. And I wrote that book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, specifically just for that moment, so that you could have 2 copies of the book, one for yourself with all your little Post-it notes and everything, but the other one is a clean copy. You hand that clean copy to the faith-based leader, and you say, you need a plan for what is coming. This book offers you a plan. If you have any questions, I am at your service. Please do not hesitate to call upon me. And when you do that, your countenance is calm. You're not happy about circumstances, but your countenance, your appearance, your body language is going to be, you're situated. And that's going to be a very important moment because there's going to be an interesting juxtaposition between you and everybody else, or most everyone else in the leadership of that organization. They're going to be running around like chickens without a head. You're going to be calm. Think about a hurricane. You have the eye wall of the hurricane. You get caught in that, it's going to tear you to shreds. But once you're inside the eye of the hurricane, it's calm, bright, sunny, peaceful, and nice. So you become the eye of the storm for that faith-based leader. Whoever that person is they know they don't have the time to read a book that's thick, okay? There's a lot of knowledge there. But they know you've read it. and that's when you start to mentor, and you start helping that leader. Now, most of the people in awareness, grandparents, they have extended families. So where does that leave your extended family? Well, for a lot of them, it's very, very sad. Grandparents who are in awareness break my heart, because in most cases their children are deniers, and these grandparents want to tell their grandchildren, explain to them things so that they can see what's coming. But their children say, Mom, Dad, you're great, love you, wonderful. You talk about this Planet X nonsense to my kids, I'll cut you off. You'll never see them again. This is what happens all the time. And more often than not, for many years, I used to do relocation consulting. I would help people find different places to go to and help them work through their own personal issues. I quit doing it because I kept getting too many of these grandparents in awareness who are in this threatened situation, and they're emotionally they were just distraught. And for myself, it just was like helping them through this emoting, all of this crying, all of this anguish, because they felt impotent. Because what's really, what are their choices? Think about it. You're a grandparent. Your children are probably living along a coastline in a city like Los Angeles, for example, which is definitely ground zero. You're going to die. You're going to die badly there. And, your kids are saying, I'm going to cut you out of your grandkids. You're never going to be able to talk to them again if you don't stop doing this. So at that point, you can either move on with your life and try and forget that you have a family, you have progeny. That's a little tough to do. For some people, not so tough. Or you say, I'm going to move to Los Angeles or wherever my children and grandchildren are, so that when they are dying, I can be there to comfort them and to help them to understand why they're dying, so that they don't get lost and follow the light and make it to heaven. Or I can move close to them, and when certain events happen that tell me we're very close to these things starting to pop off, then I will kidnap my grandchildren and take them to a place of safety so that I can save them and sacrifice my children. Bad idea. But those are the choices that they have. That's the anguish that they feel. All right. This is the kind of pain that goes on for people who have to deal, who are in awareness, dealing with those who are in denial, who will do anything, say anything, make any kind of threat, destroy any kind of relationship, not to actually look at the information. All right. That's a real problem. So you're going to have that kind of effect going on, even when everyone's looking up in the sky and seeing something, but at the same time, talking heads on the fake news media are saying it's an interesting light show, don't worry about it, it won't hit the Earth, which will be a statement of fact. Planet X will not hit the Earth. Anybody that tells you is a mindless idiot. But if you're able to help, then the next step is you now become part of the leadership of that faith-based organization, because you bring a calm understanding. You can help a leader work through the process of making decisions so that whatever they do, they're going to have the best possible chance of survival for everyone in their community. And you're going to become valuable in that respect. And so that's when you say, I'm very happy to be a part of your community, but I have children and grandchildren. Can I bring them into the community? Now, if the community really, if the leaders really want your help and your advice, are they going to say, we want you, but your kids are going to die? We don't care. All right. I mean, there's no point in it. So, yeah, they'll let you bring in your family. And if they don't, I mean, you did not do your due diligence properly to find the right people to offer your services to. And it's as simple as that. So it takes, a period of time of making a strategy, acclimating to it, seeing how you're going to deal with things. And this is effort. And a lot of people don't like making that effort. It's easy to go to the store and buy buckets of freeze-dried food and put them in your garage and go, problem solved. All right. And the problem is not solved. You go get these buckets of dehydrated food. It's not emergency food. And I don't know about in Europe, but in the United States, these companies have to, they could say, the name of our company is the Amazing Survival Food Company, but their buckets of dehydrated food are sold as camping food, not as survival food. Why is that? Well, it's because you need a lot of water and heat to rehydrate dehydrated food. All right. That means, let's say you're on the move. You're traveling on foot or in vehicles to go find a place where you can set up your community. If all you have is dehydrated food, you have to stop, gather firewood, fuel, something for heat, build a campsite, build a fire, find water, and essentially it'll be one canteen of water per person, just so you can have enough water to dehydrate or to rehydrate the food. Think about it. You've probably lost 3-4 hours out of the day in trying to make dehydrated food edible. On the other hand, you have canned food you can eat right out of the can. Chili, vegetables, beans, corn, whatever it is. People don't realize it's very inexpensive to buy a can of green beans, for example. Well, you eat the beans, you're going to get the nutrition value of the beans, but you're going to have about a half a cup of water in that can or more. So you eat the beans and you drink the water, you have hydration, you have nutrition, and you could do it while you're walking along the path. So this consumer solution of freeze-dried food, folks just aren't thinking it through. They're not taking a long view of what's happening. So with the books that I'm writing, what I do in my research in my life, because I do this 7 days a week, is the things I think about right now are the kind of things that people will be thinking about a few years after the tribulation has begun. I'm already into the future. I'm thinking in the future. People aren't there. And, it's like other technologies, in the 1950s, the steamship, the United States, was launched. It was the fastest ocean liner in the world. Still, to this day, nothing was ever faster. It could go as much as 50 miles an hour on the open water. And for about 14 years, it was the queen of the sea. Everybody wanted to go on the United States back and forth to Europe. Well, then all of a sudden, along comes the Boeing 707. And that was it. That was the end of the these ships that were designed for fast passage in the Atlantic. Now we just have cruise ships, which are only about a third of the capable of about one third of the speed, and certainly not as maneuverable. And they had to shift to it. So you have a sudden change that brings things about, and there were a lot of people that really got caught open. Their futures, their financial futures were vested in steamships, and they just didn't see the Boeing 707s and international flight like we have today. They didn't see that coming, and so they lost their fortunes. But the ones who saw it coming shifted gear, sold out from the old technology into the new technology, and they made a killing. Same difference. So you have to have that ability to look at what's coming in the future and to prepare for it. Here's where I see people who have money do much better job than most folks. Most folks, they just don't. They get caught up with fear porn, emotional stuff, because it's like ghost stories. You sit around a campfire, eat a marshmallow, tell a ghost story. Everybody goes, "Woo!" And then you go to bed and it's all over. No, it's not going. That's not the way it's going to work. But then there are people who have money and they understand risk, and they hedge on the risk. So they're not looking for a smoking gun. Most people look for a smoking gun, because if they're going to actually do something constructive about planning and preparation, it takes time, money, resources, effort. And for people who are just trying to get by from day to day, that is a huge demand that they don't want to deal with. So anything that they can think or do or say not to make that effort, they'll run to that, like water going the path of least resistance. I see a lot of people in awareness who spend hours every day on YouTube looking at some of the most ridiculous videos. I mean, nowadays on YouTube, I'm sorry, but there's just a lot of crap. That's the only other word for it. It's just crap. Somebody goes, look, there's an FAA webcam and it has a smudge on a cloud. That's Planet X. No, excuse me. Sometimes a smudge on a cloud is just a smudge on a cloud, okay? But people will spend their time on that instead of really thinking it through and what they're going to do and how they deal with it. So there we go. I've been rattling on.
No, we were talking about, we were planning to talk about the content of the book that I...
Yes. Yeah.
And what it is about, it's a very little book compared to the other books, like your Surviving Planet X Tribulation. It's over 400 pages, and then I have the Colburn Bible, and why I bought it from you or your company was that you said that there is a description of the previous Flyby, which is the Exodus, but then this little book, which is only, I believe, 70-80 pages, there is quite a good description what the Egyptians went through during the last Planet X flyby. But it's also the name of the book is it's Great Genre Planet X and the Planet X and the Colburn Bible connection, Atlantis, Deluge, Exodus, Nibiru. So that the previous flyby was Exodus, before that Deluge, and before that Atlantis. But what I would like to ask you, Marshall, we have been talking now quite a long time, and it was very, very interesting. And but you were so kind that you said maybe that we could have another. Um,
No, let's take a little break, 10, 15 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll do another segment on the Colburn and the Planet X connection.
or would it be possible to do it maybe in the beginning of next week, so that I could prepare also the 10 questions? Uh, it was a book that I was preparing, and it was also very down to earth, like what happened when, like what do you believe will happen, and how could we handle it, so that I could also prepare maybe you, so we could have a discussion very down to earth. How much water do you need to have, or what do you believe that with the fires, how could we handle it, because we believe that the trail will have small stones which are very hot, or so,
Mm-hmm.
so that we could we do, so that, do you think that you would have time like Monday, Tuesday, or something like that?
Next Tuesday, same time, perfect.
Oh, it would be perfect. So we can say that. So I put uh, this session on the internet tomorrow, and then we are planning on Tuesday that we could have like very down to earth talk, and maybe if people want to ask something specific, so that they could write it in the comments now, so I could ask you, or I could send to you before next session, that people would like to know this or that. Is it possible that we can do so, so that we could talk like more about this Planet X, this little, the content, and especially the, it's the pages 40 from 49, where it's so well, quite well described what happened when the Egyptians saw this on the sky, and what followed then. And so,
Sure. Absolutely.
okay, thank you. So we say on Tuesday.
Tuesday the 5th, 9 o'clock my time. Same
Perfect.
as we did today.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Marshall. This was very interesting, I must say. So I believe many people will look at it. So,
Well, I've enjoyed being on. I hope the information is helpful, Alexandra.
thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.